Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. It's February 23. Dustin Schutte with me as always, and we're joined by Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Hello, Mr. Dylan. How are you, sir?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. It's always glad to have you, especially since we'll be on Fort Wayne Radio soon, joining up there. So it's fortuitous for you to be on with us. What's new with Mr. Dylan?
Oh, not a whole lot. We had a lot of rain in Fort Wayne yesterday.
Everybody else has a lot of snow. Everybody else is complaining about snow up there.
Yeah, no, that was the thing is that Michigan got all the snow and it was a little warmer here, so we just got rain, but it poured for basically the entire day. We had some flood watch and stuff like that, but other than that, we're doing okay.
Notre Dame football or basketball, they're in kind of no man's land right now. They're in the ACC, which sucks right now, which it used to be the premier. It used to be the Big Ten and the ACC, and right now it's the Big Ten and the Big 12. But Notre Dame basketball, they're in kind of it's not that it's not a job that people won't want, but again, they're in the ACC, which is it's Notre Dame. I don't know. That's a tough coaching job.
It is. No, absolutely. Mike Bray obviously has not had a ton of success there over the last 5 years or so. They made the tournament last year and had a nice little run. But outside of that, it had been a little bit since they had last made a run in the NCAA tournament. And Mike Bray is a very, very good coach who had a lot of success there. That's a job that people are going to want. Notre Dame has, for as much as everyone knows about Notre Dame football, there's plenty of tradition in Notre Dame basketball. They've had success over the years. They've had good coaches. And so there are going to be coaches who want that job. There are going to be no shortage of them. And so they will get a good coach. It's just a question of who it's going to be.
Yeah, we'll certainly see. Of course, Indiana and Purdue coming up this weekend. We'll talk about that. Before we get to that, though, Alabama and their situation, I'm shocked that the school, the president itself, has not stepped in. The athletics director, someone obviously beyond Nate Oates, who, judging by his comments, is a little too far removed from the reality of the situation. And I'm talking about their star player who led them to a win last night with 30 plus points. But this is the guy who got a text to bring a gun to a murder scene, a loaded weapon to a murder scene, to what would become a murder scene. He did. He takes this gun to this guy, and it is used in the commitment of that murder. And yet nothing. I'm shocked that they're not at least saying, all right, we've got to at least look at this. You can't play for a couple of games. We'll sit you down something. No, they're like, oh God, this season's not going to be derailed come hell or high water.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like SEC football all over again.
Well, Alabama, first of all, is having a very good season. That is the reality of the situation. Nate Oates obviously had to clarify his comments yesterday. Even he said that he was a poor choice of words, is what he said when he said that Brandon Miller was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Which obviously, no matter what you think happened in that situation, I don't think that is the case. I don't even think Brandon Miller would say that was the case. So yeah, it's a very odd situation. It's kind of hard to talk about exactly what's going on there because we still haven't really gotten a full airing of the facts with that situation.
It's the one thing that is clear. He took a loaded weapon. He received a text, took a loaded weapon to this guy where the murder was committed. I mean, those are the few facts that have come out. That is what makes this the more mind-boggling to me. I'm like going, Alabama, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? This is on the heels. This is going on at the same time that Michigan State is having these ceremonies and memorials to the students that were just killed on that campus. And yet here's a player that took a loaded weapon to a murder scene where a murder was committed, and this dude's still playing.
No, it's just a wild situation in kind of college basketball, and it's not something. I mean, you don't see this every year. Like that it's just kind of something that has kind of come out of nowhere, essentially, with this program. And man, this is a team that was ranked number 1 in the country just a couple of weeks ago. And I feel like Alabama, it is one of those things where we talk a lot about Purdue. We've talked a lot about Houston this year. We've talked about a bunch of other teams at the top. We haven't talked a ton about Alabama this year, just because they've always kind of flown under the radar in basketball. And right now, they're the talk of college basketball for multiple reasons. And that's just, it's a wild situation down there in Tuscaloosa.
Here's what I'm going to say. John, get ready for the bleep button or to mark this down so you can bleep it out, because I'm not going to speak on the facts of the case. I don't know them. I don't know if Brandon Miller's innocent, guilty. I don't know the law, so I'm not going to speak on it. But what really pisses me off in these sort of situations is we often hear coaches talk about learning life lessons, right? And let's say best case scenario, the scenario I would like to believe is that Brandon Miller is innocent and it was an unfortunate circumstance. I don't know. That's why I'm not speaking on the facts of the case. This is strictly let's say best case scenario. He is innocent in all of this. I'm not going to dive into the facts of the case. You cannot play that kid based on what we know, in my opinion. That's what I would say. So we talk about these coaches talk about we got to learn life lessons. It's bigger than basketball. This is about life. If you have to sit that kid and say, look, I know you're innocent. We got to wait for the facts to come out. I know it stinks. You have to sit out. That's a lesson that sometimes life is shitty, right? Like sometimes things don't go your way and you have to learn those lessons. The refusal to teach that actual life lesson in this potential best case scenario is he chose wins over, in my opinion, Nate Oates is choosing wins over somebody's life. That's my opinion. I don't know the facts, but you can't sit there and say I'm teaching more than basketball because you're full of shit. That's basically the bottom line. He's choosing to play a player over somebody else's life. And again, I don't know the facts, but best case scenario, you got to sit that kid and say, look, I know it's unfair, but sometimes life is unfair.
Keeping John busy.
That's all
today.
I'm going to say on it. Because
let's end the expletives there.
I'm done with that. I'm done with that. I just wanted to say hopefully that didn't come off poorly. I don't want to speak on the facts of the case. I'm just saying in a best case scenario, if he is innocent, you still have to sit him because of what we know, because of the circumstance. That's all I got to say.
I will say one thing that kind of is interesting to think about from Indiana's perspective is that if you'll recall back in the spring of 2021 when Archie Miller was fired, Nate Oates was a name that people were talking about as someone Indiana wanted or was thinking about, and so kind of just the sliding.
No different than what's his name from Texas?
Oh, Chris Beard. Yeah.
Chris Beard, yes.
Yeah. And so just kind of the sliding doors aspect of that of what if it was Nate Oates leading Indiana right now instead of Mike Woodson, and what would be going on with Indiana right now, and just kind of the way that the program would be at this point. It's just a strange hypothetical to think about.
Well, Indiana has seen a season like that come crashing down. You think back to Kelvin Sampson, and that's what happened. You had a great season, and all of a sudden, bing, walls come crumbling down. That's something that will continue to go on, especially as we get nearer and nearer to NCAA tournament time. But the big game on everybody's mind this weekend, without question, Dylan, Indiana traveling to West Lafayette to take on Purdue. Obviously, Indiana beat Purdue at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. Purdue very, very tough to beat at home. They've been tough to beat, period, this year. I'm not saying Indiana cannot win the game, but they cannot win the game in the ways I've seen them play on the road. They cannot win the game the way I saw them play at Michigan State. they're not even going to win the game the way I saw them play at Michigan. It's going to take more than that. They just, this third guy just is a figment of imagination. It's an apparition. He comes in and you think that they have him, and all of a sudden, poof, there is no third guy. And it cannot be the Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis show. That will only go. That's the same thing for Purdue. That's why I don't see them getting past the second round in the tournament. I think that the guard play is going to eventually catch up to them, and I think that one of those Big 12 teams, they're going to handle Zach Edey. All you got to do is put him in a box, and we've seen the ways to beat Purdue. So, but this weekend's game, it will be emotional. Purdue, obviously, the Mackey crowd is going to be crazy, and Indiana could sure use this win after losing on the road. That would be a great resume stuffer, but they're not going to be expected to win this game.
No, and it's going to be interesting because if Northwestern loses at Illinois tomorrow, or tonight, I should say, Purdue will be able to clinch a Big Ten title with a win over Indiana. So Indiana would have to watch Purdue cut the nets essentially if they lost that game. So that would be an added storyline. But no, you're right. Indiana has not played well on the road. And it was going to be tough to win that game against Michigan State on Tuesday, but Indiana should have put up a better fight than the one they did. I think both of those things can be true. It was going to be a very difficult game to win, just given the circumstances. Yep. But they didn't put up as good of a fight as they should have. Trace Jackson Davis looked a step slow most of the night, and it was the first time we had seen him look tired. He had played 37 minutes or more in 8 of the previous 9 games. He looked exhausted, and you hope that having a couple days off will give him a chance to get closer to 100% against Purdue, because they're going to need him to have a huge game. They're probably going to need 30 from him in that game, unless Xavier Johnson had a cryptic tweet yesterday about controlling the controllables, and I can't remember what the rest of it said, but it sounded like he's getting close to a return. Maybe Xavier Johnson pulls the Willis Reed and goes out there and leads Indiana to a win on Saturday. I don't think that's likely. Even if he comes back, he's going to be extremely rusty. But yeah, they're going to need a huge game from Trace on Saturday. It's going to need an enormous effort because Mackey is going to be probably the best environment in the Big Ten this year on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be interesting is I think people look at how Indiana played against Michigan State and expect, they haven't played well on the road and maybe expect them to come out in a similar fashion. I don't expect that at all. And I talked about this earlier in the show. I don't think under the Archie Miller era that this was a program that took the Purdue game all that seriously. Like, I don't think they differentiated it from any other game on the schedule. I think Mike Woodson's different. I think this game means something to him. Last year it was, I would be surprised if it wasn't similar to last year, right? Indiana won a close game at Assembly Hall, and then it came down to the wire again at Mackey Arena. That's kind of the game I expect. I do think that, and I think it means something to Trace Jackson Davis. You're not going to win a Big Ten regular season championship this year, but you can potentially prevent Purdue from doing so, or at least preventing them from doing it against you. So I think that there's a lot of incentive here. Obviously, Purdue's still playing for a Big Ten title, so this could be one of the better college basketball games of the year because of what's at stake. Indiana's obviously playing for seeding. They're trying to get one of the top 4 seeds in the Big Ten tournament, and then maybe a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Purdue's still hoping to win the Big Ten and potentially get a number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. So, this is as jazzed as I've been. I was excited for the first one. I'm even more jazzed for the second one.